Welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast. I am your host, Jason Osborn. And on this podcast, we interview successful business owners for them to share atomic, impactful lessons that they've learned throughout their business career and share them with us. And as always, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everybody hates. We use this method to book 26 qualified leads and sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, or endless social media posting. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborne on LinkedIn, and the link to that will be in the show notes below. On today's show, our special guest is Lisa Ealy, and apologies, Lisa, if I've mispronounced that. But you are the owner of the Purple Squirrel Group, which I love the name of that, where you provide career coaching for professionals ready to take their careers to the next level and HR consulting for businesses that need to strengthen their people strategy. So, welcome to the show, Lisa. And I want to start off with a question that I love asking. And it is this: if you were to somehow go back in time to when you started your very first business, what's the number one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
Wow. I think the number one piece of advice I give myself is that don't be afraid to start small, right? Everyone has to start somewhere. Just keep building. That's why we're building a business, right? And don't stop. Like, don't give up. Like, it might be two people in the room, it might be five people in the room. You might just have one client, but you've got to start somewhere. And so, if you think about the Amazon of the world, right? The Amazon, they started in someone's garage, and look at them today. But if they probably went from a garage to maybe a rented space and just those incremental steps. And so we look at people's like finished end or near the end, and that's what we want on day one. But I would just say keep building.
Yeah, I love that. Do you know, I'd love to talk on that topic a little bit because it's something that I see quite a lot in businesses where they are looking at the end outcome of what people have achieved. And nothing wrong with that. I think if it inspires you and motivates you to move forward, that's great. But oftentimes they can compare themselves and almost use it as a bat to beat themselves with. And see what you're not doing, you're not achieving this. What are some key lessons that you learned over the years to be able to, I guess, mitigate those thoughts to balance the inspiration of seeing someone that is further ahead from you, but not allowing it to be a place of discouragement?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, one of the things is so in the coaching, business, consulting space, lots of people know Tony Robbins, right? And so, Tony Robbins has this huge machine. If you look at his website, it's like 50,000 different places that you can go. But it took time to build that at the end of the day. And so, um, if you're at step two, and Tony is at step 100, it's going to take time to get from here to there. It's good to have those aspirations from that standpoint, but I didn't say it, but it's true. Rome wasn't built in a day, right? And
Yeah.
so keep have those aspirational goals, but don't allow them to beat you up. Allow them to to say, okay, so I have a website. What's one thing this quarter, this month, I can do to make it better? And then you just take those incremental steps, and before you know it, you'll be where and even past where you thought you'd be. And so I just say this: keep going.
Yeah, definitely keep going. I think one of my favorite books is called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And it is that it's easier said than done though, oftentimes, that just one step at a time, let things build upon each other. And one of the questions I'd like to ask you, Lisa, it's one of my favorite questions to ask on the show as well, is um, throughout your business career, I know we all go through challenges. What's one of the biggest challenges that you've faced in your business? And what's the number one lesson that you learned from that?
Yeah, the biggest challenge that I faced in my business. That's an amazing question, right? So much of the time we hear all like the positive things. I think the biggest challenge that I face is that, starting a business is lonely, right? Like it's lonely. And balancing that with also the appropriate level, I believe, of risk, right? So risk reward, kind of looking at that. And so for me, I consider myself a very social person, and I had to make an intentional effort to make connections and connect with other people in the space. And to do that, but also to identify the risks that I was willing to take as a business owner. And so I'll give you an example that I give lots of my clients that I work with, who may start as solopreneurs and then they hire their first person, whatever that looks like, whether it's a part time person, a W 2 or a 1099, right? A person who's like, you're giving benefits to, or a person that you are just paying a salary, is sometimes you've got to take the risk, but know that I'm really just making sure I'm able to pay the person for 90 days, maybe, right? And I'm not looking at if their annual salary is 50, 60, or $100,000. I don't need $100,000 in the bank to hire someone. I just need um, to make payroll, right? At the end of the day. And be clear about what that looks like for your business. So I think for me, it is managing the loneliness of being an owner, but then also managing the risks so that you can grow.
Mm. Yeah, some really gold nuggets in there. So, one, realizing that, and I think we all know this, but as a business owner, it is lonely. But then also managing the risks associated with the actions you take. And I love that you've chunked down the risk instead of going, okay, do I have the entire annual salary there? But you're saying, okay, what can I do for the next 3 months to meet that payroll? And it's just managing that. How do you see common themes with the clients you work with in terms of risk management? Is there some key elements that you can see in that could really stand out that we can all learn from?
Yeah, so I think the biggest common theme that I see related to working with business owners and risk, especially when it comes to like team building and that piece of it, is that they are following the masses, right? And so I know there was a time before where people were like everybody needed a virtual assistant, everybody needed, an ads manager, everybody needed X, whatever that thing is. But that may not be exactly what you need in your business to scale and grow. And
Mm,
so being willing to take a step back and say, based on my business model, how we make and how we've lost money in the past, perhaps, and want to avoid that, what do I really need to do more of to scale? And taking a step back and looking at your business, your offerings, and how you've grown versus what you see other people doing in social media.
yeah. Yeah, I love that. So just taking a step back and looking at what you need to do for yourself. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. In your business, because we're all unique. But also not just that, but really critically understanding, how you wanted to operate for yourself. So what are your priorities? So for me, part of, creating my own business was to have the freedom to do what I love doing and to work with the people that I find interesting, and that are doing interesting things and making a big impact in the world. And so it's important for me to do that, but also to have the time to be with and spend time with those that I hold near and dear. So I never wanted to create a business where I was working 24/7 and trying to figure out when I was going to rest. And so I really preserve my peace, but I also preserve my personal time with my family, and those are the things that are most important to me. And so on the days that I work, I start early and I'm up late. But on the days that I don't work, there's no exception. I don't work. I'm doing other things with family and friends.
Mm. So I hear very clear boundaries is what I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely. And when it was a tough lessons learned, I have a quick story I can share. And
Yeah.
so I remember one time I had a client I really wanted to work with. I thought they were more committed to the work and achieving their career goals than I was, which is always important for the work I do. And I agreed to work with them on Saturdays, which is really family time for me. And what ended up happening was is I carved out the time to do that, and they showed up less to those appointments than I did. And so
Mm.
it taught me a very tough lesson is that I have a boundary for a reason. And if a person really wants to work with you or your organization, they will figure it out. Even if your fees are higher, if you're only available 2 Tuesdays out of every month for a certain type of engagement or opportunity, then they will figure out how to get the money and they will figure out how to make it work. And so I've learned that for myself and it works.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say all that because I found that same thing to be true in my business as well. And there are a few times where I've gone against that. And, someone's, kind of quote unquote convinced me. And every single time it always backfires. And it's very strange. But I think a lot of hesitancy for business, whether they're new in business or they've been in business for a long time, to set those boundaries because they think that they're going to be missing out on business. So what are some opportunity costs that people kind of have maybe backwards in their head around that? And like, oh, that sounds great, Lisa, but gosh, if I do that, I'd actually be losing a lot of business. What would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah. And so that's really a great question. And so at the end of the day, right, it's not that you never make exceptions, right? There are reasons to make exceptions, but they've got to really be clear and aligned with your goals, right? And so, one of the things that I learned is to plan out the year. And so, I'm beginning, if you can believe it or not, to think about 2026. I'm like saying it out loud. And so, I already have a 2026 calendar, and I'm going to drop in those important family birthdays, anniversaries, things that I just don't want to miss, and plan around that, right? If there's something, so for example, I have a goal to have to deliver a TED talk next year. And so, say that happens on my anniversary, right? Then I need to have a conversation with my husband, and then maybe it can work or maybe it can't, depending on what our plans are. But I also have to know that just as that opportunity landed for me, another one will. But also, it helps me to be able to manage, do I have something else going on that's already on my calendar? And so, because I've had a goal to do a TED talk, then that might be a reason for me to reschedule something that we had planned for anniversary.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. What I'm hearing as well, just clear communication around that with the people that you are um, very close with as well. So that's amazing. Speaking on goals, what are the other than your TED Talk? What are some of your business goals over the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah. So one of my big business goals is, I want to show 1,000 people how to move their career forward to a place they never imagined that they go. And I'd like to work with 1,000 businesses to help them solve their biggest people challenges. And so those are two big goals for me. The other one is my husband and I, and this is more personal, but it's also kind of business, is that I really want to live location independent. And my business is already that way. We recently invested, it was a project that's real close to being done. We purchased an RV, and we're going to test it out in a few months and get on the road for a whole month and see. And I'd really like to live part of the time on the road, traveling around the US and conducting business from an RV.
That's amazing. I love that goal. That's very, very cool. I have similar goals, but I have to wait for my kids to finish school.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's amazing. I love that. Well, Lisa, for people who want to hear more about you or learn more about you, what's the best place for them to go to?
Yeah, so the best place for them to go is you could go to lisaealy.com, but you can also follow me on LinkedIn. I'm Lisa Ealy on LinkedIn and very active on the platform. But what I just love connecting to people and seeing them reach their goals.
Amazing, amazing. Well, definitely contact Lisa if you've resonated with anything that she has said there. And Lisa, thank you so much for being on the show. And as a reminder for everyone, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods everybody hates. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn, and the link will be in the show notes below. And in the meantime, stay inspired.